Welcome to WHRO's Weekly Edition. I'm Doug Boynton. In this week's program, Chesapeake Regional Medical Center picked up more than $3.5 million for psychiatric emergency care. WHRO's Nick McNamara takes us to Newport News for a tour of the Jefferson Lab. It's the research center's first open house since 2018.
Part of our mission is to be a good community partner and to share the science that we're doing here.
And I rang up Gary Lundquist of the Real Estate Information Network to see if record-high home prices are making room for first-time buyers. But first, this news update from NPR. It's WHRO's Weekly Edition. Suffolk is launching a mental health co-responder program this July. WHRO's Nick McNamara reports that officials hope it will help people who need extra mental health support.
The new program is called Medical Access and Resources for the Community, or MARC. It includes one mental health clinician and one paramedic. Starting in July, the team will respond to nonviolent behavioral health crises called into 911 or 988.
They're also going to collaborate and work with them to figure out what's the best place for this person, because it's not necessarily in the back of a cop car or the emergency department.
That's Suffolk Fire Captain and Marcus Coordinator Ray Willett. He says these co-responders can provide in-home treatment, or in more serious cases, they can transport patients to Suffolk's Crisis Receiving Center for care. Willett also envisions the team connecting people in need with social services and community resources. Nick McNamara, WHRO News.
Last week, state officials handed Chesapeake Regional Medical Center a cool $3.7 million for psychiatric emergency care. WHRO's Michelle Hankerson reported that story.
The Emergency Behavioral Unit, or Comprehensive Psychiatric Emergency Program, is the first part of the hospital's larger behavioral health program. Virginia's Secretary of Health and Human Services, John Littell, says Chesapeake Regional has stepped up to address many of the region's mental health needs.
We're getting to a place, and we will be very soon, where the whole comprehensive slate of services are available to people in this region and are supported by the services that we have at the state going forward. So it's really a tremendous step forward.
The psychiatric emergency room at Chesapeake Regional is the first in Hampton Roads. It's scheduled to open by the end of this year. Chesapeake Regional also expects to open a 20-bed inpatient unit and intensive outpatient program next year. Michelle Hankerson, WHRO News.
The military is preparing for wars to be fought in places other than a battlefield. For the first time, National Guard from around the country were in Hampton Roads for the largest cyber exercise in the United States. WHRO military reporter Steve Walsh covered it.
Cyber Shield involves 1,000 troops from National Guard units in 28 states and several countries. Through the end of the week at the State Military Reservation in Virginia Beach, units are simulating an attack on a private network like a power company or internet provider. Colonel Rusty McGuire, commander of the 91st Cyber Brigade, says it's like a field exercise.
So in the modern world, in the cyber, we do those same war games, but they're on a cyber range. So you have Blue 4 and Red 4, and they're just going after, defending, and attacking networks to work on those skills, to harness those skills.
Virginia is the headquarters of the National Guard's Federal Cyber Brigade. The unit defends Department of Defense systems around the world. McGuire says the National Guard has become increasingly active in countering cyber attacks in the last decade. At the state level, units will often respond to attacks on private companies. Steve Walsh, WHRO News.
Thanks to new anthropology and DNA technology, more families are getting the remains of relatives who died in old wars. The Army now identifies about 200 sets of remains every year from as far back as World War II. However, finding families to accept the remains gets harder as time goes by. Jay Price reports for the American Homefront Project.
This month, Staff Sergeant Robert J. Ferris Jr. came home. He was a 20-year-old turret gunner in a B-17 bomber shot down in World War II. His remains were retrieved from a cemetery in France and identified last fall. That's when a phone call came to Barbara Weiss of New Bern, North Carolina.
I think it was a process of elimination because they started with my grandparents and it went down the line, and everybody they thought of has passed.
She's sitting beside the casket just after the graveside service, holding in her lap the flag that had draped it. Weiss is Ferris's niece, born years after he died. When she got the call, the Army Mortuary Affairs Specialist first asked if her grandparents were still alive.
And the next one would be an aunt, and then they were asking about my Uncle Al. He was gone. Then they asked, do you know Bertrus? I said, that's my mother. Can we talk to her? And I said, she's passed too. And then I said, I'm the only one. I'm the next of kin.
That's typical now that the remains the military is finding and identifying mostly date to World War II. There's no immediate family to be designated the official next of kin.
Probably about 60 to 70% we're dealing with now never knew the soldier.
William Shorty Cox is a senior mortuary affairs specialist for the Army, one of 4 who contacts families when a long-missing soldier is identified. In 14 years at the job, he's seen a shift away from Vietnam War cases as the number of recoverable remains from that war have dwindled to perhaps a few hundred. Meanwhile, tens of thousands are possible from earlier conflicts. And for those, most immediate family are already gone. Usually a distant family member is willing to stand in as next of kin. It helps that the military covers all the costs, but sometimes relatives are so far removed they don't want to bother.
I've got a case where I've gone through 16 family members, and I can't get a single one of them willing to take up the mantle to bury the soldier. They don't know them. They're busy, and I'm on my last family member now.
And if that one says no, the Army has to act as next of kin and decide things like the burial site. Such cases were once rare, but Cox's team has 3 others in process right now. George Washington University professor Sarah Wagner is the author of What Remains, Bringing America's Missing Home from the Vietnam War. She says even if no immediate family is alive, there's still merit in accounting for the missing. It shows current service members that the country values them, and it means something to those who attend the memorials, like one she went to at Arlington National Cemetery, where no one knew the deceased.
There wasn't a dry eye from what I could tell. I mean, people felt incredibly moved. But there is a sense of pageantry, right? Here is the 21 volley salute. Here's the folded up American flag handed over. You become part of something and you can trace a lineage to a moment of sacrifice.
At Ferris's burial, Weiss, the fallen soldier's niece, cheerfully stepped into her unexpected role and helped organize things like a funeral home display of faded photos.
I did not know him, but now I do know him. My grandmother was such a loving person, and so was my aunts and my other uncle. And so he has to be a part of that.
And so now, this is how we remember long-missing troops when they return, as part of everyone's family somehow. I'm Jay Price, reporting.
The American Homefront Project, a public media collaboration that reports on American military life and veterans, produced this story. Remember when the Democratic General Assembly linked Virginia to California's electric vehicle mandates? Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin says, no. WHRO's Sienna Morales reports the story.
The mandates would have required 100% of vehicles sold in the Commonwealth to be electric by 2035. Lawmakers voted to adopt the standards in 2021 with the goal of reducing auto emissions. Republicans have attempted to repeal them in the years since. Now, Governor Youngkin is citing a legal opinion from Attorney General Jason Miyares that says Virginia does not have to comply with the standards, which were created by California. Electric vehicle ownership is on the rise in Virginia. About 40,000 electric vehicles were registered in the state in 2022, more than double the number in 2020. Sienna Morales, WHRO News.
This is WHRO's Weekly Edition. Remember, for any stories you've missed, you can visit us on the WHRO smartphone app or all social media platforms.
Scientists from around the world use it to study atoms. Its full name is the Thomas Jefferson National Accelerator Facility. We know it as the Jefferson Lab in Newport News. The doors were open to the public last weekend. It's the first open house at that Department of Energy Research Center since 2018. WHRO's Nick McNamara was there for a visit in advance.
The open house at the Thomas Jefferson National Accelerator Facility, or Jefferson Lab, is the 15th in its 40-year history and the first since the COVID-19 pandemic. For lab employees, it's a rare chance to showcase their work directly to members of the Hampton Roads community. Senior scientist Doug Higginbotham says 3 of Jefferson Lab's 4 experimental halls will be open and staff will be on hand to answer questions.
For the first time ever, we're going to open up one of our arcs. This is the bending part of our accelerator, as well as the linear part. Stuff that public has never seen before will be open.
Scientists and technicians from the lab will walk visitors through the various components of the accelerators they're working on. Technician Jared Martin explains that one of those is the cryo module.
Cavities are made from niobium, so when it's super cooled, it's a superconductor that allows the beam to travel through. In our accelerator, it travels around and around, and then they shoot the beam to whichever hall and at a target, and that's where the scientists do their experiments.
Also new at the campus is Jefferson Lab's first permanent art installation, a Virginia Lovework sign fashioned from accelerator parts from Argonne National Lab in Illinois.
I'm kind of a dumpster diver at heart, right? I like to recycle things.
That's senior engineer Kevin Jordan, the man responsible for constructing the piece. Jordan leads a team in the Center for Advanced Accelerator Studies at Jefferson Lab, but his artistic creativity was sparked by a wave machine project for the Burning Man Festival a few years back.
In the past, it would be concentrated on electronic components and chassis and things like that.
The Lovework piece also has an educational purpose. It will have QR codes mounted around it that will direct to information on the accelerator components that make up the work. Education is a big focus of the open house, and Science Education Administrator Lisa Searles Law's team will be busy at various demonstration booths around the lab.
It's crucial because part of our mission is to be a good community partner and to share the science that we're doing here.
Rhonda Bell and Carol McKisson will be 2 education team members on site Saturday. Throughout the open house, they'll be doing magnet demos and a cryo show 5 different times. Liquid nitrogen is necessary for the cryo modules used in the lab's accelerator. Bell will showcase its cooling powers by dipping a flower into the chilling substance.
I hear crackling. Do you hear crackling? It's crackling. What's crackling is inside the flower is the water. It's not going to stay very long.
With so much of Jefferson Lab's work centering around accelerators, technician Tom Goodman will assist in teaching visitors about the level of precision necessary in their experiments.
Here at Jefferson Lab, we accelerate electrons at nearly the speed of light. And the speed of light is right around 671 billion miles per hour. And that's with something we can't see. Timing has to be perfect.
To demonstrate that, he created a model accelerator gun using compressed air. Visitors can each control a button that fires a blast of air into the tube, then launches a ball at a bullseye, if they get the timing right.
Go.
Oh. Just a second. Timing's a little off. So let's try it again.
Ready, set, go.
Nice.
103 miles an hour.
Yeah.
103?
I'm not sure that's
Not
good,
exactly.
No.
While staff will be divided into different activities and demonstrations Saturday, Lisa Searles Law says they're unified in excitement.
It's like welcoming visitors to your house. We just get to share with students and make them excited about science and math and technology and let them see that they can touch it, that they know things already, and that they can ask questions and that we're very willing to take the time to answer and engage with them.
The open house runs from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Visit jlab.org/openhouse for more. Nick McNamara, WHRO News.
The Real Estate Information Network tracks homes for sale across Hampton Roads. Their May report showed improvement in the market, the number of homes for sale more than 30% higher than a year ago, topping 4,000 for the first time since October of 2022. However, home mortgage rates remain above 7%, and the median sales price hit a record high of more than $352,000. Gary Lundquist of the Real Estate Group heads the Real Estate Information Network, and we began the conversation with this question. With home prices at record levels, is there any room in the market at the low end for first-time home buyers?
Well, it's definitely getting tougher for first-time home buyers. There's no question about it. With a median sales price of $352, so I think things do pop up from time to time. You just have to be diligent in looking for those opportunities, and probably, maybe expand, if possible, your geographic footprint, so that you can take advantage of those opportunities.
This month's report compared favorably to levels in 2022. I guess the next question would be, when will we get back to pre-pandemic levels?
Yeah. So if we're talking mortgage rates, I think, there's been a lot of speculation throughout this year as to when we might see a rate decrease, and that looks like it's going deeper into this year, if we're going to see one this year at all. So, interest rates, they have gotten a little bit better, but they still have a long way to go. I don't think we're ever going to see, personal opinion, we won't see those pre-pandemic rates around 3%. I think those days may be gone for a long time. But my hope is that we will see rates continue to migrate down. The good news, I think, is that the active listings, is going up, which is always good when we have more listings on the market for buyers to choose from. It does make things a little bit better from that perspective.
As the number of homes listed for sales increase, will that bring the median price down?
Although listings are going up, they would have to go up considerably more, I think, before we'd start seeing any impact like that. We're kind of in a funny situation. As interest rates come back down, it's going to create more demand, because those folks that have been sitting on the sidelines will then jump into the market, and then we will have even more demand on a limited supply. So right now, and I think I've kind of shared this with you before, if somebody is in a position to buy now, and they find the right house, it probably makes sense to make that purchase if they can, and then consider refinancing down the road, because I think the competition for homes, once the rate starts dropping in an appreciable way, will increase significantly.
A Washington Post article this week said that increasingly young people are buying that first home with help from parents or other relatives. Do you see that here locally?
I think there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, I think, family members, parents, grandparents, those that have the ability to help folks in a first-time buyer situation are definitely stepping in to kind of fill that gap in a way probably like we haven't seen in years past.
And what's the outlook for the rest of this year?
I think we're, in a bit of a recovery year, personally. That's the way I would describe it. And I think things will continue to move in a positive direction. And I think as we get towards the end of the year, we'll start seeing some of the rate increases or decreases rather that we've been hoping for. All those things will be positive, but it's going to take a little bit of time for us to see a more balanced market, that's for sure.
The federal government has authorized a national memorial to veterans of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. But that monument in Washington, D.C. is still years away, and some veterans don't want to wait. So they've started working with state and local governments to build smaller memorials nationwide. Desiree Diorio reports for the American Homefront Project.
In 2021, the last U.S. troops withdrew from Afghanistan, marking the end of a 20-year war that took thousands of American lives. It was around that time that Army veteran David Vieira began batting around ideas for a monument to commemorate America's longest war. He and his friends sketched it on the back of a bar napkin at his local VFW in Connecticut.
We drew a map of Afghanistan, we drew the map of Iraq and chicken scratch, and we drew the towers and our little eagle in front.
On a sunny May afternoon in Danbury, Connecticut, Vieira and his team held a dedication ceremony for the completed monument. It's pretty close to what he imagined. 2 10-foot replicas of New York's World Trade Center to acknowledge the September 11th attacks that galvanized so many of this generation's warfighters. On each side, a granite block in the shape of Afghanistan and another of Iraq, the main theaters in the war. Separate blocks contained the names of the 65 Connecticut service members who died. Seeing it now, Vieira says it brings him solace.
My daughter was little when I deployed to Afghanistan, and to be able to take her to a place to see that the community recognizing it, to be able to point to the map and show her where I was, that just has a special meaning. And I think that is something that every veteran feels and can connect with.
Vieira says the lack of a national dedicated space for these particular wars hurts.
We all either personally knew somebody or know indirectly someone that we served with in Afghanistan or Iraq that has committed suicide since we've been home. And we just find it unacceptable that they never had a place to see their service recognized in a real permanent way. The community recognizing and showing their appreciation for their service and sacrifice. So that was a big driver behind why we wanted to do it ourselves and get it done as quickly as we possibly could.
Connecticut is not alone in its endeavor. Memorials to honor the veterans of these wars have gone up in communities throughout the country. Plans are underway to construct a national memorial in Washington, D.C., but that process has been bogged down with bureaucratic hurdles and strict federal laws about how, when, and where to build. Michael Rodriguez is the president of the Global War on Terrorism Memorial Foundation, the group that's been tasked with planning, funding, and eventually building the memorial. The foundation has been on the job since 2015. Rodriguez says there's not even a rough draft yet of what the memorial will look like, but that doesn't mean they haven't been working.
I am thankful it is so damn difficult to get this done, because who knows what would be up there, right, if it was an easy process.
First, the foundation needed Congress to grant an exemption to a law that requires 10 years to pass from the official end of a conflict before a national memorial can be built. Then back to Capitol Hill for another exemption, this time for the location on the reserve in the National Mall.
We waited until we got a location because we want to be sure that whatever this memorial comes out to look like, this functional piece of civic art that's going to adorn our nation's front lawn in perpetuity, we want to make sure it fits and it looks appropriate, and that belongs there.
Now, the design team is preparing renderings, which Rodriguez says should be ready by the end of this year. Then it needs approval from the federal government and National Park Service. All the while, Rodriguez says the foundation has been aggressively fundraising as it grinds through each step of the process.
This is a privately funded project. No taxpayer money can be used. I don't look at that as a negative thing, because I get told a lot, why are we doing this? We need to be raising money to fight veteran suicide. We need to. I said, well, where's the we? I'm not getting taxpayer money.
Rodriguez says construction could start as early as 2026 and be completed by 2027. When it's finished, the Global War on Terror Memorial will stand near the Vietnam War Memorial and the Lincoln Memorial. I'm Desiree Diorio.
This story was produced by the American Homefront Project, a public media collaboration that reports on American military life and veterans. And that's a wrap. You've been listening to WHRO's Weekly Edition. Help today came from Steve Walsh, Sienna Morales, Nick McNamara, and Michelle Hankerson. Jay Price and Desiree Diorio with the American Homefront Project, also WFAE's Zachary Turner. As always, thanks to Connor Worley. He produced today's broadcast. A reminder, you can always catch full episodes on the Weekly Edition podcast feed, and you can always get news updates at WHRO.org and the WHRO Reports podcast feed. For all of us at WHRO and WHRV, I'm Doug Boynton. Stay safe. Be well.